Welcome back to the DBG podcast. We're coming in with some NFL Week 1 overreactions. I'm your host, Dave. And joining me is my co-host, Preston.
Patriots to the bowl.
And special guest, Blake.
Second what Preston said.
So if you can't tell, Blake and Preston are Patriots fans, and I think y'all are feeling pretty good after Week 1.
Oh, we feel great. I mean, honestly, just keep the 6 to 7 linemen on the field and let Stevenson run the ball. 200 yards against the Seahawks is inbound for sure.
You know, I really appreciate that they decided to do that the year after I have Stevenson on my fantasy team instead of last year when I drafted him.
I mean, how can you predict that an NFL team in the year 2024 is going to use 6 to 7 offensive linemen? So we know what our weakness is, and we adjusted, so can't complain.
Gerard Mayo special.
Definitely a player's coach, as we've seen the kind of locker room kind of come around him, so.
Patriots won a game post-Belichick era before Embiid made a conference finals.
Before GTA 6, really. I mean,
what, you thought they're going to go 0-17 this year?
Hey, I mean, I wasn't confident, but I don't know about 0-17, to be fair.
Yeah, I had the floor at like 4-13.
Yeah, that's fair.
Going back to the first game of the season, we had Chiefs versus Ravens at opening night. Great matchup. What are y'all's thoughts on that game?
I think it definitely lived up to the expectations that everybody had of it. It was a great matchup to start off the NFL season. And, I mean, coming down to the last play, it was cinema, if you ask me. I personally not the biggest fan of either team, but I mean, you can't really ask for much more than what they gave us on Thursday night.
I mean, really all we saw was that the refs are basically the Chiefs' 12th man, to be honest with you. Calling several things against the Ravens that they weren't doing for the Chiefs. But, I guess if you're the league's favorite, you get that. So,
yeah, it was interesting, the whole elite whatever they were calling when Ronnie Stanley like 3 times on the first drive.
Well, yeah, that rule, they came up with that because of that Chiefs right tackle, and they didn't call it on him at all. Like, it wasn't fully come up with it because of him, but he is one of the main guys that would line up way far back like that, which they're trying to enforce. So it's interesting that he wasn't getting called for it while the Ravens were, but that's just going to be a tough rule to enforce because, I mean, how do they want to handle it? Do they want to call it every single play if the team's doing it every play? Because they called it on Stanley at one point. Then he lined up the exact same way the next play. They didn't call it on him again. So it's just such a subjective call with how they're handling it so far. It's one of those that they're probably going to have to adjust how they handle it mid-season.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I watched Red Zone all Sunday, so wasn't specifically tuned into one game. But that was Thursday night was the only time that I can recall over the weekend that I remember that being called that many times in one game.
I mean, from what I saw, like I said, like you said, I didn't watch every game either, but even the games that I did watch, I don't even know if I saw it once. If I saw it once, it definitely wasn't twice. So,
yeah, it's definitely interesting because it's supposed to be a point of emphasis for the refs this season is what they're saying during the Thursday night broadcast, but they always come into the season with one or two things that they're going to emphasize a ton. And then usually what happens is there'll be sometimes when the roughing the passer, when they made that the point of emphasis and it stuck. But a lot of times they'll come in with something, they'll overdo it. So then they got to tone it down. I think that might be the case here if they do try and keep calling it.
I think they're going to call it more against the teams that the Chiefs are playing, to be fair.
That's fair. But going past the refs, I mean, the Chiefs, they look like the Chiefs. Their offense is going to be good. Really the biggest thing is their defense. Lamar made some plays against them, but they did a really good job of getting pressure and not letting him get in the rhythm. I think the Ravens O-line is definitely a concern. They've lost a lot of talent there in the offseason, and it's showing between that and the lack of weapons. I don't think their passing game is going to do that much this season. I think it's really going to be Lamar always runs the ball a lot, but there's a lot of times in that game where he'd just get pressured so quickly that he'd have to take off. And he doesn't really have many options downfield, with Zay Flowers really being the only meaningful receiver.
Well, it was interesting that they went away from what they did on the first drive with mixing it up between the handoffs to Derrick Henry and then Lamar keeping it on the read option because, quite frankly, they looked unstoppable that drive where that's all they did and just marched down the field. And I think Lamar ran it in for like a 5 or 6 yard touchdown. But I saw that the first drive and I was like, this is going to be a problem.
I mean, a lot of that could just be to do with that was probably their script. And I was listening to the Pat McAfee show earlier today, and Belichick was on, and he was talking about how if an offense runs like a 10 to 15 play script, you can't really base your adjustments off of that first drive or whatever, just because most of that is just their script of where they're trying to mix things up from what they would usually do.
Yeah, that's a good point. But I do think it's an interesting thing because when Monken came in as their offensive coordinator, one of the things that they talked about a lot was they wanted to open up the passing game. They wanted to spread teams out more. And they've really tried to do that, but they just don't have the personnel to successfully do that. Like Likely and Andrews are good tight ends receiving wise, so you can count them as weapons. But outside of them, you have Zay Flowers, and that's it. Rashad Bateman's turned into a bust, and they don't really have any other receivers that can really do much. And their O line is now a lot weaker, so Lamar's just going to be scrambling around a lot. They kind of need to play to that, where go back to those read options, which yes, teams are going to load up more to defend that, but they probably need to make that more the core of their offense with the personnel that they have. Well, anyway, let's go back to that Patriots-Bengals game. So I think the biggest overreaction you can take from this is the Bengals might be dead. I mean, I say this every week one when they lose and disappoint, but another terrible week one performance. I mean, maybe the Patriots are a lot better than people expected, but the Bengals just every year seem to do this. Nobody plays in the preseason. They don't really do shit in training camp. They show up week one and they lose.
I mean, yeah, and another thing that like not a lot of people are talking about is the fact that like Jacoby Brissett, he didn't play amazing, but he didn't make any mistakes either. Like he didn't turn the ball over. He got the ball out in time and ran around, trying not to get sacked and everything. But I mean, he didn't make mistakes, and that honestly, in part, won us that game. You know, like we never gave the Bengals good field position to at least even get like a field goal or anything. So
I think a lot went right for the Patriots, but even though like there's a lot to say about the Bengals and all the off-season drama and people not participating in training camp and the whole thing with Jamar Chase's contract, but I think under Zach Taylor, the Bengals are like 2-10 in the first 2 weeks of the season, which is I guess like nobody really expected Cincinnati to lose that game. But then again, I feel like nothing went right for them as well. There was the one play in the red zone where it was like I can't remember who the tight end was that caught it, but like walk-in touchdown and had the ball smacked out of his hand. It's just like those things in a game like that are going to add up. And when something just isn't going your way, it's not going your way and it's not your day.
I'm not sure that Zach Taylor is a great coach. Because, yes, they made the Super Bowl, and that's obviously a great achievement. But before that, people were really out on him because he had been around the Bengals for a while, didn't have much success. And after that, there's still just always these things that pop up where they're not prepared at the beginning of the season, or there's questions with the play call, and there's just always just feels like there's some big question mark with this team, and they just struggle to get it together. It's almost like it'll take them nearly halfway through the season to really get clicking. And then they're one injury away from falling apart always. I know when their quarterback gets injured, that's kind of a different story, but it just feels like a team that maybe isn't the best coached because I don't care what excuse you want to say if players holding out, players doing whatever. You got to be prepared for the beginning of the season. And when it's become a trend over pretty much every season that you've been the coach, that's something that needs to be addressed.
I mean, I agree. I mean, it's tough though when you have your, which I don't know how true this is, but Jamar Chase was like, I had food poisoning. I think that was just Christian Gonzalez, you know, but it's whatever. Jamar Chase was said to have food poisoning. T. Higgins was out, and like, I really don't think that he expected our defense to be as good as it was either. Like our defensive line, yes, we lost, what's his name? My mind just went blank.
They
Dude,
lost. They lost Judon to the
Udon.
trade.
Yeah, but Keon White stepped in and like just it didn't seem like we missed him at all. If anything, we got an upgrade there. Like Keon White played amazing Sunday. And really no one like not even Patriots fans, I don't think expected him to do that good because honestly, as Patriots fans, we were kind of out on Keon White to begin with. So
Yeah, it was also nice to see Christian Gonzalez back in after going down and missing a lot of the season last year. Overall, I think the Patriots did surprise a lot of people this weekend, but if I even speaking as a Patriots fan, is it to be expected of like a potential playoff contender? Absolutely not. I mean, every what's the saying? Something about even a blind dog finds a bone sometime, whatever that saying is. But I mean, I'm not saying that it was like straight luck that New England won this weekend. I just wouldn't really expect a trend to continue against teams of that caliber.
I think that's fair, but I mean, at the same time, a win's a win, and being able to start your tenure off as a coach, getting a win, it's just a good building piece. Even if they end up having a bad season, as they probably will, because there's just not a lot of talent with that team, especially on offense. At least they were able to get the job done. They're able to create winning habits, and I think it's just a good start. I will say one
I
thing
agree.
though. One takeaway I had on the Bengals side, their defense is bad. Like, especially their run defense. The Patriots, what they did really worked, but the Bengals just can't really stop anyone. And this has kind of been a trend the past couple seasons. They've had a lot of big losses in free agency they haven't really been able to replace. And I mean, it's just week one, but it might be starting to catch up to them, just all the pieces that they've lost. Their defense, people lots of times will assume that it's going to be good because it has in the past. They play in the AFC North, but there's a lot of holes that they've lost, and guys are going to have to really step up.
Yeah, if I'm being honest, I can't name one starter on that defense.
Other than Hendrickson.
Yeah, pretty much. But anyway, going to things that do mean something and trends that definitely will continue. The Saints, they're winning the Super Bowl. It's at home in New Orleans. It's just the perfect year for it to happen. Yes, the Panthers might suck. The Saints go out there, beat the shit out of them. New offense with new offensive coordinator. And look what happens when Pete Carmichael's gone. The offense actually clicks.
See, y'all say you're making the bowl, but honestly, from what we saw, I think the Panthers might be like legitimately the worst team in the league, worse than the Patriots. So I wouldn't put too much trust in that one game.
I mean, I will say the Panthers offense definitely is up there with the Patriots, how people were projecting it to be. 'Cause I think Bryce Young is the worst quarterback in the league. Yes, he's in a bad situation where it doesn't help, but he had guys open that he just couldn't hit. Anytime there's any semblance of pressure, he panics in the pocket. He just does not look like an NFL quarterback out there at all. And I think that franchise is just handicapped by that trade.
Dude, there was throws that he was missing that were like 10 yards over their head. And I'm just like, how are you missing them this bad? You know, it was definitely mind-boggling to watch him miss some throws.
Yeah, and I mean, the Panthers are never going to win anything as long as their owner remains the same. Because ever since he's come in, he's just been impatient about everything. They get a new quarterback almost every season. They'll go trade for a guy, then he doesn't work. They'll go sign and trade for another guy, go trade up to draft Bryce Young. It's like just cycle through quarterbacks constantly. There's been no continuity, and all this is just eating up expenses that make it harder to build the rest of your team. You go trade up to get Bryce Young, you get rid of your first round pick the next year. That would have been nice to have for a developing quarterback. You get rid of other draft capital, and they're just a complete mess of an organization. Not to mention how they fire coaches after their first season. Like, I don't know who would want to coach. Like, let's say that they fire Canales and things go wrong. I don't see who would want to coach there. I don't see who would want to play there. They're just a complete dumpster fire of an organization.
Yeah, I mean, they haven't had anything good since Cam Newton, Christian McCaffrey, and when they lost them, it's been downhill since then. But I mean, I don't really want to focus on the Panthers too much, just because I mean we know what we know there. They are them and the Giants are from week one look like the worst teams in the league.
Throw Washington up there as well. Like Jaden showed a lot of flashes, but that defense won't be able to stop anyone.
Oh, for sure. And I mean that they played arguably a top 5 quarterback in the league, but hey, yeah. I would put Washington in the same category as the Patriots right now, even though we got to win. As hard as it is to say, I would put them in that same category. The Commanders are going to fight. The Panthers and the Giants will get blown out week in, week out, and that's the way I look at those 4 teams.
Yeah,
So
I think that's fair.
I don't really think there's too much to focus on with the Panthers. The Saints, though, dude. As a Saints fan, how do you feel about Derek Carr now? Are you like sold on him, or are you still like we're going to play a good team and it's going to go all to shit?
So this is what I wanted to say about it. Derek Carr, it's an interesting situation because he actually did finish the season last year playing really good football. Like the last 4 or 5 weeks of the season, I think he led the league in passing touchdowns and looked like a better quarterback. The thing is, that's kind of the Derek Carr experience where he'll play good some weeks, then the bottom will just come out. I don't think that he is at all a top tier quarterback, but I think he's a guy that can at least do enough to get the job done. And really, what a lot of fans, like myself included, were saying before things really went to shit last season is Pete Carmichael was just a terrible offensive coordinator. He was stuck doing, and 10 years ago thought he still had Drew Brees as his quarterback, was trying to do things the exact same, and he just didn't really have a feel for calling plays. And a lot of that was when he was here with Brees, he didn't call the plays because Sean Payton was the play caller. So he was just trying to replicate that exact same thing. And it was just so bad. We'd get goal-to-go situations, and no matter what, we'd just go run a fade 3-4 times in a row, and it wouldn't work. We just had like a lot of confusion. There'd be miscommunications, people running the wrong routes. And I think it cannot be overstated how much of a mess the offense was under him. So just getting any offensive coordinator in was an upgrade. But I think Kubiak also showed a lot to like. They did a good job of spreading the ball out, getting different guys touches. I know Olave owners are kind of pissed off, but part of it was game script. But they did spread it out. They got the run game going. They got 8 different receivers, had a catch, I believe. So it's just a different look offense, and I am excited about that.
Fair enough.
But yeah, moving on to games that people actually care about, because as fun as it is to talk about that, it was against the Panthers. But we've got the Cowboys picking up a win week 1 on the road at Cleveland.
Not shocked at all, to be honest with you. I mean,
I wasn't really a lot of surprise. The biggest surprise to me in that game was that the Cowboys were betting underdogs at like plus 112 or something on most sports books, which kind of came as a shock to me.
I did not know that they were underdogs for that game. That's wild.
Yep.
Well, the big reason is because it is on the road. The Cowboys actually were a bad team on the road last year, so this is a bit of a statement going and beating. I wouldn't call Cleveland a good team, but they do have a really good defense, and I think that is something that you can take away, that the Cowboys offense was able to have success against them. But Deshaun Watson, that might be the worst move in NFL history, making that trade and then giving him that contract.
It's a tough one for sure. I mean, I don't know what's the reason for it, but I mean, it's part of it's just him being out. I saw a tweet today that was like, what if his like, you know how some people wear like a dirty sock or some shit or whatever? What if his like superstitious good luck and now he's playing like shit is because he can't go to the massage parlor no more, you know? It'd be a sick and twisted idea, but like, what if that was his way to play good? You know what I'm saying? And now he's banned from it.
And another case just came out against him today.
From like recently or like back at the same time period?
It was it's from back in the same time period as like 2020, was it?
Yeah, it was like same situation, just like another person speaking out about it.
You got to wonder if that leak came from the Browns organization, though, trying to find a way out of that contract.
Yeah, I mean, speaking to the situation, as a Clemson fan as well, when it all first came to light, when he was trying to get out of Houston, like in my mind, it was like, to me, almost like Houston was trying to like just deaf him his image because he wanted out of the organization. And then it got to a point where I was like, I can't keep defending this guy. So now it's kind of like tuck the Deshaun Watson jersey away in the back of the closet and act like I never owned one. But I think on top of the whole thing, yeah, I think it is kind of like an interesting thought to think about. Like, what if that was like his like special juju that like all NFL players have, and now he can't do it anymore. But another thing to think about is just based off of how he performed on Sunday, I think this whole like long-term nagging shoulder injury that he had surgery on in the offseason, it has affected his play on top of very sporadic like in-game play time over the last 3 seasons with everything going on.
Well, yeah, I mean, it looks like his arm might be kind of gone because he just isn't able to make those deep plays anymore. And I mean, he threw the ball 45 times and completed 24 passes, averaged 3.8 yards per completion. Like that's
Something
basically,
else Belichick.
I was
Something
gonna
else
say that's
Belichick said
basically a
earlier
run
in the
play
show.
every play.
Yeah, but something else Belichick said in the show was like, I think it was more than half the quarterbacks this week, or no, 12 of the quarterbacks this week threw under 2 yards a completion, and then half of the league threw under 4 yards of completion. So, and I mean, a lot of that, like for Deshaun Watson's case, he didn't play any preseason. So, I mean, this is his first game back, shaking the rust off. But I mean, he doesn't look the same no matter what. But he hasn't played all preseason, and I think their situation could be very similar to the Bengals, to where it's just they start off rocky. I'm not out on the Browns just yet, but if this is continuing still week 4 and 5, I think there's time to question whether Deshaun Watson needs to be gone. And um, Jameis Winston is at the Browns. So when do they start thinking about putting him in? You know.
Well, I was gonna say going back to the Bengals, I think that it really is a consequence that teams have had with this new preseason format. They've kind of treated there's been like two different schools of thoughts. There's been teams that treated it like the old preseason where they still play their guys, they still get them reps. And there's been teams that are like, you know what, preseason shorter, let's just go rest everyone and all that. And you're seeing those teams really end up struggling. So I think it is kind of a thing where there is value to getting those game reps, getting that match fitness up, being ready to perform in season. But because in soccer, that's a really big thing that people talk about is like a player having their proper match fitness or whatever. And whenever preseason rolls around, they'll usually have some friendlies and stuff, kind of like preseason games in NFL where the squads will be rotated and all that. But players that weren't able to play much, there'll usually be a talk that they don't have enough match fitness, so they're likely to be rotated, and maybe they'll play only half of the first match and kind of build that up. In the NFL, if you can sit out the whole preseason and then you're full go, and you're seeing these teams, it's like maybe their fitness levels aren't there. They also just don't have the chemistry because they just haven't been playing, and it's something that I think we're going to see a change in where teams are going to take preseason more seriously.
Yeah, it's important that they've got to find the happy medium of getting the starters out there and getting like real time reps, because it's very obvious the first few weeks of the season where guys are shaking off the rust of not playing for however many months. But at the same time, I think the main concern with people not doing it is the worry of like, your Christian McCaffrey or your Patrick Mahomes, somebody like that going down with a season-ending injury and like a meaningless game. But I think that's something that people have to start looking past because these guys are going through practice camps and training camps like throughout the summer. And the same thing can happen in that situation. I mean, yeah, like an in-game setting is a lot more high paced and comes with a lot more risk, but that type of thing can happen to your guy on a practice field.
Well, I think taking it even further, I'm sure there's plenty of research that we could look at on this, but I would not be surprised if players are more likely to suffer those season-ending injuries or major injuries week one if they don't play in the preseason at all. And that's like where the school of thought in soccer comes from, where if a player hasn't been playing a lot in preseason, hasn't been able to get on the pitch time in a game, that he's not going to be there fitness-wise. So you want to kind of ease them back in when you can. The first game of the season, maybe sub them off at halftime and do something like that because they need to have time in an actual match because it's just not the same in practice. And that's kind of what we're seeing. Teams like the Bengals, where they're just getting those practice reps, they just don't look like a cohesive team out on the field yet. They just seem like they're not ready. And I'm sure injury risk probably isn't reduced that much, if at all, by not playing in the preseason because you then come into the regular season not having played an NFL-paced game in a year.
And another thing, I saw a stat today, there was a total of 46 interceptions in week one, and the amount of touchdowns in week one was cut in half from 4 years ago, week one. So there's definitely a decline in, what's the word for it? The probably, I guess, just offensive star power in week one. A lot of that could just be to do with teams trying to keep it simple and defenses being able to pick that up week one. Because I've heard of that being a thing early in the season, is where it's kind of just teams getting into their groove before they get too crazy. But at the same time, I mean, it's definitely been a weird week one, if that makes any sense. Like offenses have definitely not been the same as they typically are.
Well, really, the past couple. Go ahead.
I mean, you have your teams like the Chiefs. They kind of started off slow, but they got it figured out. I mean, they're the Chiefs. They got Patrick Mahomes and everybody. They're going to be fine. And maybe you could look at it like that from teams like the Chiefs, and even as we're seeing right now, as we're recording this, the 49ers. I mean, a lot of their players haven't been playing in preseason and training camps, but they're coming out just firing, just because they are the top of the notch teams. You know what I'm saying?
Just let Jordan Mason fire a bit more and get a touchdown or two.
Nah, I think we're good there. But you don't want to go into the season looking cocky by not playing your players in the preseason. But I think teams like the Chiefs and the 49ers, I think they can be okay with not playing their preseason players or playing their players in the preseason. Because with players like McCaffrey, who you see are injury prone, I wouldn't want to put him out there during a preseason game. You know what I'm saying? Just because teams are not going per se 100%. You have your players that are trying to make a roster spot going 100%. But coaches are also talking throughout preseason, be like, hey, this is what we're going to do. This is what we're going to show. Like, let us kind of keep that base defense and let us run this offense. You know, it's really not that much of them getting used to playbook as it is just them getting game speed. Players like Christian McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel, Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, they're fine week one. They'll adjust just like that because they're just elite players. So, but if you have, like, let's say it like a Jacoby Brissett, he needs that preseason to warm up, or he's going to look like in the regular season how we did in preseason, and where we all thought Jacoby Brissett was going to turn the ball over 3 times, you know, but he didn't. So, and that's just something to think about from team to team. Maybe it's not everybody plays in preseason, but maybe it's just your guys that are borderline not elite. You get some reps in the preseason, and they're looking great in the regular season.
See, I disagree. I think you need to take it further and have those players need at least have one game where you go out there. Like it used to be, you'd play kind of a bit in multiple of the games, but week 3 used to be that dress rehearsal game where all your starters would play the first half, sometimes a bit into the second half. I think if you have that, it's just so valuable because you get those reps, you get up to game speed, and you get practice playing, but you're also playing against good players on the other side, and it helps you out there. but also just the cohesiveness. Your receivers and quarterbacks get their timing down in a game against actual coverage. You get practicing getting your calls in during a game situation. I know the crowd's not the same, but it's still just all of that piles together, and it helps the preparation. And I think it's something valuable that a lot of teams are lacking. And I do think it's really interesting comparing the teams that take the approach of resting everyone versus don't. But the other thing I wanted to point to is there has been a trend recently where it's just a little bit, but scoring has gone down the past couple of years. In 2020, it peaked with what teams' points per game were averaging. Then it was just a little bit lower in 21. And then it dropped in 22 and then dropped again in 23. So there has been a little bit more of a shift towards defense. But moving on, let's go to what I would say might be the best matchup of the week so far. Sunday Night Football, Lions hosting the Rams. What a game that was.
That was a very fantastic game. I'm hurt and upset that Puka Nacua is out, have him in fantasy, but we'll get past it. We're 1-0, so that's all we can ask for right now, but got to figure out where we get that production from, because we're not going to get it from Pikachu, anytime soon. So it really looked like the Lions were going to control that game for the longest time. I kind of missed the middle part of the game because I was in a meeting, but for the most part, I mean, I went away and I thought the Lions had pretty much not won the game, but they were looking like they were going to control it. And then you saw the Rams come back, and it was like, hold on a second. What the biggest play that confused me, I will say, was the Matthew Stafford interception in the end zone. I know the announcer said something about this, but you rarely see Matthew Stafford make a mistake like that. Because I mean, I was looking at it and I was like, how did he not see that guy? But then you look, the Lions player was wearing blue in a blue end zone with a blue black backdrop. That was a tongue twister for anyone who wants to try that. But it was really confusing how we just simply missed that Lions player that was sitting right there in front of him. I don't know if y'all saw anything different from that, if y'all could speak on that, but that was just really confusing to me there.
All I saw is
Oh yeah, I saw that replay you were talking about, and that is very uncharacteristic of Stafford. But no, yeah, it looked like the Lions were just like going to essentially walk away with a very easy W, and that was like really not the case. Los Angeles hung in there a lot more and put up a lot better fight than I really thought they were going to. I think we got a pretty vintage Cooper Kupp performance last night as well. And I even with the news of Puka Nacua going on IR with I think it's a PCL sprain, so probably looking at 4 to 6 weeks, but it's got to be uplifting for Rams fans to know that Cooper Kupp can still provide that production, and there really hasn't been any fall off, even with like the injury plague season last year. One thing I'm excited about, or was very surprised to see, was Demarcus Robinson. Only like I think he only had like 4 or 5 catches, but looked really good. And I think one guy that's gonna get a real opportunity here that wouldn't is going to be Jordan Whittington, the rookie from Texas. And this is kind of that time where you start to take in fantasy considerations too, of like who's that guy that could like make an impact that nobody knows about until like somebody goes down with an injury type of thing.
Yeah, that's definitely going to be huge. Whoever emerges as the number 2 receiver while Puka's out is going to have such a huge role in that McVay offense. But, I mean, they were just back to it. Cooper Kupp all the way back, 21 targets, 14 receptions, and just every single play, you'd see him in motion, just throwing off the defense, making things difficult. The McVay offense was just at its best there, utilizing motion. But I think what you really got to give credit is their offensive line. They were already down to their second string left tackle, and then Noteboom gets hurt. They've got their third string tackle there. They got Avila gets hurt, so they have to go in with their backup left guard. And it's week 1, and they're already throwing in a third string tackle, second string guard, just piecing it together against Aiden Hutchinson. And he really started to go off once Nopeland went out, but still, just props them for fighting through all that. They're a good team, and that's a well-coached team on offense. And as much as I hate them for that NFC Championship game, they're always going to have a good offense with McVay.
Now, I will say one shocker from that game, the Rams rushing game. I mean, Kyron Williams really like taking control of that backfield, isn't it? Like much of a surprise. I think he had like 18 of the 24 total rushes for the Rams. But I was shocked to see Ronnie Rivers getting touches over Blake Corum last night.
Well, I think the big reason for that is pass protection, because right now he understands the protections, and that is a huge thing with McVay. They said it on the broadcast. He wants his backs to be able to understand their protections pretty much first and foremost. So he's not going to put Corum in there until he's familiar enough with that and is able to protect Stafford.
Yeah, I mean, even on like the goal line situations, I was kind of surprised to not see them bring him in on like that 2nd and 3rd and goal they had where Kyron Williams put it in for like the 1 or 2 yard rush touchdown.
Yeah, I mean, I think Kyron's just what McVay has shown is if he has a back that he can trust as the workhorse, he will use him as the workhorse, and he doesn't really care too much for rotation.
Which has been interesting because that's just like not really what we've been used to with the Rams backfield in the last few years. With, I mean, the whole Cam Akers situation, Todd Gurley, what was the guy's name from Memphis? Darrell Henderson. They've always seemed to really rotate guys in that backfield, and like part of it was injury, the other was performance, but now it looks like they finally like have that guy, and that guy is good.
Yeah, I think the big part of it is they just didn't really have a good running back, so they just had to rotate options, play the hot hand, and just try and do that. But speaking of rotation, how about what the Lions are able to do? Just basically every other drive, shifting who their running back is, and both of them going off. I know it probably frustrates people who have Gibbs in fantasy, but that run game is just so good with the offensive line they have and being able to have a fresh back every single drive. It's going to be hard to stop, and so what you saw in overtime, the Rams defense just looked like they're too tired to get that stop, which for a lot of it looked like the Lions defense had gotten worn down in the 4th with how much possession the Rams had. And then the Lions just go and turn that around and do the same thing in overtime. Just pound it. There's a really old school game with how much the run was emphasized by both teams.
Yeah, I would agree. I'm very surprised to see David Montgomery still getting the workload that he is. But I mean, until he really shows signs of regression, like just keep on doing what's working.
It's exact. I mean, as long as he's doing well, if they have two backs that are performing well, they want to use them because they trust both of them. They have a bit different skill sets. They can kind of use them for different roles. But being able to have these two guys means you're going to be facing a fresh back as the defense. It just makes it so much harder to stop. But
I think that keeps both Montgomery at his age to keep pushing longer. I mean, maybe that furthers his career. Damn, I can't speak.
Another takeaway was Jamo Williams had kind of a breakout game, you could say.
He had been injured all last year, correct?
He started off the season injured and then kind of was slow to get integrated.
Yeah, that's right.
I think you're going to see a lot more of him with Josh Reynolds in Denver now.
I know he really just adds a whole new dimension to that offense. Because even if you just have him running as a decoy, just having that deep threat with that speed who can take the top off the defense, it spreads them out a bit more. And then you saw he was able to get that big play for the touchdown, but also if the defense is spread out more, that just benefits their run game so much. With if your safeties have to back off to cover Williams, then the box is getting lighter for that run game that's already so hard to stop.
Well, I think that's all the games we're going to cover. But
anything else that stood out to you from week one?
We could talk about the Will Levis meme of him surrender cobraing in the middle of an interception return.
Thinking about what's her name on his knees, bro. That's crazy.
Dude, Will Levis is so bad.
Dude, every time I see that picture, it gets funnier every time I see it.
That's like up there with the Andy Dalton pick six picture or whatever, where the receiver corner's diving into the end zone and he's just pissed off at it. That was a stupid throw as well. Like they had the game won. The fact that the Bears won that game is just ridiculous.
Well, it's like what you're referencing what Belichick was saying. I'm like, what's the upside of making that throw? If you complete it, you
Yeah.
get a couple yards, or if you don't, you lose the game like you did. There's no reason to make that throw in the first place.
The Bears didn't have a single offensive touchdown, correct?
I don't think they did. Let's go see. But
Did not know.
yeah,
That's ridiculous.
I mean, I think the takeaway from the Bears defense, they were good to finish the year last year. They're going to be good this year. Titans defense did look much improved. I mean, I know they're playing a rookie quarterback, so that definitely helped, but they went and made a lot of additions in free agency, and it really all clicked. So they might be a team that their offense is just going to be so bad, so they're not going to win a lot of games, but they'll at least make it tough for teams.
I'm going to just bring this up. I know it's severely off topic, but it is just something that I happen to see. And while we're on the topic of just like extracurriculars from the week, just saw a bet slip, and it's a very realistic opportunity right now with the Niners running the ball and running the clock out and getting close to the red zone here with Jordan Mason.
Yep, with that big run, we're getting close. Come on.
The bet slip is a 2-leg parlay with plus 1,126,500 odds. The first leg is Robert Ref Snyder of the Red Sox to hit 2 home runs in their game tonight against the Orioles, which is cashed. The second leg is Jordan Mason to score 2 touchdowns.
Well, hey, I would be a big fan of that hitting. I think that'd be a very awesome bet to hit. And yeah, for context, I have Jordan Mason starting instead of McCaffrey in our fantasy league, which we'll have the draft episode coming out soon. But if he gets that touchdown, I'll pretty much lock up winning this game against Alexi, because I'm playing Alexi week 1, and
Her first fantasy game ever. She's about to experience heartbreak, bro.
But also in her first fantasy game ever, if she does hold out and win, she'll have the highest scoring team in her first match ever. And I'll lose with the second highest scoring team.
It's only a custom to get broken into fantasy football by losing to the highest scoring team while you're the second highest scoring team, like the very first week you ever play. You have to expect that pain right off the bat.
One interesting takeaway to see is, what do you think McCaffrey, let's say that McCaffrey is fully healthy next week. What are the chances that they just have a split backfield? Because, I mean, I know McCaffrey's McCaffrey, but if you can have this much success with Jordan Mason, you would think that they would want to try and keep him healthy and limit his workload a bit.
I don't know. I mean, is it really because Jordan Mason is that guy, or is it because he plays for the San Francisco 49ers?
It's all because he plays for the 49ers, because the combination of the scheme and the O-line they have. But it's just showing, like, if you can have that much success with a guy like him, maybe it would be a good idea for them to try and, at least in the regular season, limit McCaffrey's load a little bit. As much as I wouldn't want it for my fantasy team having McCaffrey, it probably wouldn't be the worst idea to rotate him some.
I mean, I'm sure Mason will definitely get some reps from now on, but I don't see him.
Brock Purdy just gets sacked.
Yeah, they're kicking a field goal here.
Yeah, that's probably it.
You never know. It could, Jets could run down the field quick here, and then Jordan Mason could break one off.
It would have to be a breaking one off, because if the Niners get the ball back, they'll probably just be able to kill the clock. Honestly, I don't know what Shanahan was doing calling a pass play on that 3rd and 2 with how good the run game's been, but it's unfortunate. Anyway, going back to other games, was there anything else that really stood out to y'all?
I thought a lot of people are talking about how well Derek Carr played. The Saints, I mean, they did play the Panthers. I think one guy that I was, I guess not necessarily shocked, but more impressed of his stat line was Baker Mayfield against Washington. I think he had 4 touchdowns, close to, let me pull up his stat line. Yeah, 4 touchdowns, 289 yards on 24 for 30 passing. That That was a statement. I think the Buccaneers are going to have a good season. And I mean, Baker Mayfield's had an up and down career, but I mean, will he continue to put up stat lines like this? I don't know. I mean, they played Washington week 1, but not a lot of attention to that stat line so far, which I've found kind of surprising.
Well, we know there's one person that'll give it attention because Preston.
He's top 5, man.
If Baker Mayfield's top 5, who are the other 4?
Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Aaron. I think Aaron Rodgers is falling out of the top 5 now. And this is just like current, not all time. I gotta think through this. Lamar and Jared Goff.
That is a very interesting top 5.
Yeah, I agree with.
Let me think about this for a second.
I can agree with 3 of the 5.
Hold on, let me think.
I would argue that Jared Goff being top 5 is more of a hot take than Baker.
Yeah, I would too.
I didn't have this prepared. Let me think about this for a second.
Jared Goff is like the perfect example of an above average quarterback. He is good. He'll be able to make some throws, make some plays, but at the end of the day, he's really a game manager for them, which isn't a bad thing, especially with how they run their offense, but top 5 is a stretch.
Okay, I changed my answer. Give me CJ Stroud, and then I'd put Baker Mayfield, then CJ Stroud.
So who would the rest of your top 10 be while we're at it? Just to contextualize the guys who you think are close.
We'll go Burrow, Burrow, Dak, Tua, Goff. That's 9, right?
That is.
And Purdy. Being a game manager is not bad.
It's fair. You know, though, the one thing that I want to take away from you saying all that is when you're going through that exercise, it really made me think of how kind of mediocre quarterbacks have been recently.
It really is. It's not hard to be a top 10 quarterback because you'd think, like the starting quarterbacks now, you got like Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. Also, Russell Wilson, I expect him to be back even if he's hurt or not still because they do play the Broncos next week and he's going to want to prove something.
Oh, yeah. How about Russell Wilson being in full pads while he was inactive?
The most Russell Wilson thing Russell Wilson could have done.
But, you got that tandem in Pittsburgh. You got Deshaun Watson, who looks like ass. Anthony Richardson could easily slot himself in there. Just that he hadn't played enough for me to really put him in there yet. Trevor Lawrence looks like he's on the decline. Levis looks horrible. Justin Herbert, he's got good talent. He just doesn't seem like he can win games, And
I think he's overrated at this point.
You got Minshew at the Raiders. You got a rookie in Denver. Jalen Hurts looks like a sham. Jaden Daniels is a rookie. You got Daniel Jones, which I think is easily a bottom 5 quarterback.
Bottom 1. Actually, bottom 2 because Bryce Young still exists.
Yeah, you got Bryce Young. There's really not any good quarterbacks other than that. You know what I'm saying? It's really not. It's not hard to be a top 10 quarterback in the league right now.
I know. I feel like throughout the league, it has kind of gone down the play as a whole, so it's definitely interesting. But anyway, that's pretty much most of the talking points from week 1. Other than that, we've got Vikings looking good against the Giants, but that's no surprise because it's the Giants. We had, I could say the Dolphins-Jags was probably one of the better games, but there's a lot of question marks for both teams in that game. Passing offense didn't look that great for the Jaguars. The run game, I'm not sure if it's going to be there for the Dolphins with all those losses. But as a whole, week 1.
Can we get the update on mine and Corey's predictions record-wise?
Yeah, give me a second.
I know I had the 49ers, so...
I think one game that was kind of slept on this week was Colts and Texans.
See, I didn't have that game, so I wasn't able to watch it, but it did seem like it was a good game.
That was a great game, and like Preston said, the Anthony Richardson, I haven't seen him play enough, but it's trending toward that he's going to be in the conversation for that caliber of quarterback.
That one throw he had, that was pretty much one of the only plays I saw from that game, but that one throw he had, I know everyone knows what I'm talking about if you know anything about sports and paid attention this weekend, but that was like a 70-yard throw just on the money, running out of the pocket. It was incredible. It was one of the best throws I've ever seen.
Yeah, he slipped as he was like backpedaling. Yeah.
But yeah, that's the thing. He only completed 9 passes that game, but the passes he completed were just like that. Like you can see the talent there, and if it all clicks, he can be something really good.
Did Aaron Rodgers get hurt, or did they take him out?
I think they said they want to give Jordan Mason a touchdown.
Well, the Jets still have the ball.
Not even a touchdown at this point. He just needs like
Game.
40 yards.
Who is?
I don't know. Is it Tyrod Taylor? I can't tell who that is.
It is Tyrod Taylor.
Yeah, I guess they're just giving up. Yeah. And just like that, Dave has lost this week to my fiance's first ever fantasy football game. How do you feel, Dave?
Well, I feel like I need to go get after that waiver priority and hopefully go get someone good. Also feel like Jalen Hurts is fully to blame for this matchup.
How do we feel about beating Dave this week, Lexi?
Feels amazing. I want to thank not only God, but Jesus for giving me this opportunity and for my stupidity in fantasy football.
I want to thank Miami-Dade police for arresting Tyreek Hill.
Miami-Dade police, please arrest him more often.
But anyway, I think we're done here. We've gone over everything. So that was week 1. Preston, Blake.
Yes, sir. Appreciate y'all having me.
Adios, motherfuckers.